Welcome to the Design for a Living Big Book study. Bill and I will be sharing our own experience of how the Big Book has helped us in the removal of our DOC, drug of choice, or actually our substance of no choice. But more importantly, how the directions contained within the Big Book have helped change all aspects of our lives. We will share our pain and successes as they relate to our own journey and the hundreds of men and women that we have had the pleasure of helping through sponsorship or otherwise. Bill, myself, and the THEUDRCAST are not affiliated with any 12-step program, and we neither endorse nor discredit any method of recovery. We are supportive of all paths to recovery. We're just very passionate about what works for us. The opinions shared, though, in this study are solely that of the person that is sharing them. And with that, Bill, take it away.
I just want to mention our last session will be on April the 3rd. So that'll be the last session. Oh. And on that day also, we're going to do a birthday meeting. So if there's anyone who comes to the study and you had a birthday in March or February, you can celebrate that day. And let me know, because I'm going to get you a chip. So let me know. And then we'll also have chips for 1 month to 12 months sobriety also that day. So we'll kind of do a little bit of half and half that night that Gord just found out about right now. Right, Gord?
Help me pivot.
Roger. Okay, so we are on step 7. We're going to read the prayer out of the Big Book. Page 76. So, I'm going to ask a question. Anyone know, what they think the most important step is? Yell it out. 7, 3, 6, 1,
9.
Okay, I guess they're all kind of the most important step. But when I heard step 3, and when I was new in recovery for a long time, actually, I really thought step 3 was the deal. And when I go to meetings, I hear that step 3 is the deal. This is just my opinion, and maybe I can convince you as we go through the literature tonight that step 7 is the deal. Where is step 3 worked? Step 3's worked in the step 10, okay? That is the practical application of step 3 is step 10. That's where you learn how to turn your will and your life over to the care of God, is through the process of step 10. The result of doing that, Barb said that step 6 was the most important step, and I'm going to say I agree with that, because the step 6 is that's where you're entirely honest and willing to try repeatedly step 6 on all your faults without reservation, and you grow closer to Creator. Okay? And then through that pain and hardship and doing it no matter what, millimeter by millimeter by millimeter, even when it seems like it's not the right thing to do, we keep doing it anyway. And that's worked in the 10 though. But what ends up happening is there's such a level of surrender that kind of turns, and you surrender to the step 7. Which is the result of your willingness and honesty of your 6, but worked in the 10. 7 is the full surrender. And it's maybe not we just surrender fully, but we're constantly working on surrendering. But there's a shift in our lives when we fully accept that we don't know and God knows. There's one who has all knowledge and power. That one is God. May you find him now. Think about what that is saying. There's one who has all the knowledge and the power. The original manuscript said you must find him now. Where is God? Well, God is now. So the God is here and now. That's when we're to turn it over. And when you know, in the book, it talks about, in the program, you hear people say, walking hand in hand with the consciousness of your Creator. The consciousness of God is going to come to you. That means that you've really surrendered, and God is everything. He's the seemingly good, the seemingly bad. And that's at the point where life becomes pretty acceptable in all areas of your life. Nothing's really out of place. Nothing happens by mistake. And then there's such a peace that comes through that. But how does that happen? It comes through a lot of fucking pain and seemingly making mistakes. But if you have surrendered, you'll come to this place where there is no mistakes. And through the no mistakes there's a lot of peace and peace of mind. And you'll see that as we go through the reading today. The reading primarily will be the pain of step 6 and learning, and then the surrender of step 7 and like that deep level of acceptance. And the reading will really prove that. We've talked about humility a lot in this study, and we've talked about it as 3 levels. Humiliation, the pain of changing, which is the millimeter by millimeter growth. And sometimes we got to be humiliated over and over and over, crushed by our own self-imposed crisis in whatever area of life it is that we can no longer postpone or evade. We have to fearlessly face the proposition that God is everything or is nothing. What is our choice to be? Eventually, if you're willing, you will find that God is everything, the good and the fucking bad. So humiliation and pain, which is what step 6 is about, it's really, you're learning what God's will is. And then, but if you have this desire to really change, that'll pull you through it all. And then the surrender kind of comes after. And you'll see that in this literature as well. Anything to add? And then the other thing I will add is, like, I want you to think about the step 3 prayer. And like everyone thinks that step 3 is the deal. Here's the proof that it's not the deal. You compare the step 3 prayer with the step 7 prayer, and you put them side by side, and everyone thinks they're pretty much the same fucking prayer. But when you really dissect the words of the prayers, you will see that step 3 prayer, and I'll use a couple of the words, God, I offer myself to thee. So it's just an offering point. You're like, here I am, help me. But then when you look at the rest of that prayer, it says, build with me and do with me as thou wilt. So you're offering yourself to God. You're asking him to like build with you. You're asking him to strip you down, to take out the old wiring and all the old habits and ideas. And then it's like, relieve me of the bondage of self. So you're asking again, take away the bondage of self. Take this away from me. Fucking, I'm willing and I'm offering myself right here, right now. Take away my difficulties so that victory over them. The difficulties are the defect of character that actually causes all our fucking difficulties. So as we ask God to take these difficulties so that victory over them. The word victory is really important in that because it's really step 10, perseverance, so that victory over these things. Where do we fight these things off? In the step 10. What's the principle behind step 10? Perseverance. What does perseverance mean? It means to fight through, to become victorious over these defects that keep trying to pull you down and pull you in and take you back to your old patterns where you're fighting with God to fucking help you, relieve you of these things. Why? So that I may better do thy will. So you can serve and help Creator. Now, when you look at the step 7 prayer, it is a surrender prayer. And it said, my Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. So it's way different than I offer myself to thee. It's, I am now willing that you have all of me, God, good and bad. It's kind of like a statement. Just take me, the good and the bad, man. I ask that you remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. So you're now saying, God, take away these things so that I can serve you and your kids. Different fucking tone than the step 3 prayer. Then it says, grant me strength as I go from here to do your bidding. That's way different than the step 3 prayer. It's like, now God, grant me your strength. Give me your strength to borrow so I can go from here to do your bidding. And we've talked about bidding before. Bidding is, I now listen to you. I listen to what somebody says. And if God is the one saying it, we're listening to love so that I can better do your bidding. Now I listen to love. That's what God is. And then we talked about what is bidding in a more expansive way. It's to surrender in an overly slavish way. And what does that mean? It means without original thought or idea. It means you've surrendered and there's no more reservation. It's just I act in love and I work with love and I fucking just go there and I don't think about what am I going to lose? What am I not going to get? How's this going to affect me? Like when you're learning the step 6, the honesty and willingness to try repeatedly step 6 on all your faults without reservation, that's where you're trying to learn it without reservation, where the surrender happens and you've surrendered to like the step 7 level. It's actually without reservation. You've surrendered your thought and idea to the fucking will of God, which is love. As I go from here to do your bidding, surrender overly slavish way. And then it's stamped with amen. Amen means contract. It's the only amen in the book, and that means contract. I work for you, God. And remember back in the step 3 chapter where it talks about what we're talking about, it talks about some of these promises. I can't remember what I was going to say. Anyway, let's go.
Must have been a lie. No.
Pardon me?
I just want to...
Yeah, that sounds good. That's fucking pretty much it. It's not exactly what I was going to say, but that's awesome, Kerry. Thank you.
I like the contrast. I'm glad that Bill brought that up between the prayers. And he also talked about levels of humility, right? And I can see that at the step 3 prayer, I'm still just asking for relief. It's selfish. At that point, it's selfish. It doesn't become less selfish until I get to this one. When I completely abandon all of myself. And that's not easy. That's not easy for us guys, especially, like that think that, not guys, but people, that we think we had it made most of our lives, right? We thought we knew what we were doing. And we knew we could figure it out on our own, right? So to get to this point where I absolutely know now that I can't figure it out on my own. I've absolutely become willing through pain of trying to prove that I could do it and failing over and over and over again. And through that pain, I became willing enough to completely surrender myself to whatever God is. It doesn't matter to me anymore at this point. I will give you everything, good and bad. So everything good that I do in my life is because of you. Everything bad, I ask you to teach me how to not be that guy anymore. Because that guy still comes up. You saw it start to come up just earlier for a second when I felt a little embarrassed about something Bill said to me, right? It creeps its ugly head. Fortunately, I'm a little more balanced today and I can get a hold of that really quickly most of the time. But this prayer is so deep. It is so, so deep. I'm going to say it in my own words really quickly before you move on. My Creator, God, love, I'm now willing to recognize that you have all of me. I'm yours now. The good is from you. The bad you are helping to teach me through. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character, even though I understand that's going to take a lifetime. I'm willing to work with you along the way. Just do it. Whatever makes me more useful to people, whatever helps me spread love in this world more, make that so. Grant me strength because I'm weak. And I will go out from here after saying this prayer and I will help people. I will put love back into the world. And that has become my goal in life. That is who I am today. Amen. I guess it's a contract, but to me it's like, amen. Thank you. My life has changed because of this. And I'll sign on any dotted line right now. That's what it means to me. So.
Okay, well, I already read the prayer, I guess, out loud, but I'll read it again.
Cool.
When ready, we say something like this. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, the good and the bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have then completed step 7. You've never completed step 7. It's never completed. Like step 6 is never completed. Like none of the steps are ever completed. Now we'll get into the step 7 and the 12 and 12.
Page 70. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Oh, that would be excellent. That would be excellent. That's the most perfect answer I've heard in a long time. I said that was the most perfect answer I've heard in a long time. Thank you. That would be great. Yeah, that is the step. Yeah. Now we're going to find out what it means.
Let's stop there.
Okay. Since this step so specifically concerns itself with humility, we should pause here to consider what humility is and what the practice of it can mean to us. Indeed, the attainment or getting of greater humility is the foundation principle of each of AA's 12 steps. So every one of them, right? For without some degree of humility, no alcoholic can stay sober at all. So that's the humiliation Bill was talking about earlier, right? We have to feel pain. We have to be humiliated to give us the desire to get better. That's where it starts. Nearly all AAs have found, too, that unless they develop much more, though, of this precious quality than may be required just for sobriety, they still haven't much chance of becoming truly happy. Without it, they cannot live to much useful purpose, or in adversity. Does everyone know what adversity means? No. It is when the shit hits the fan. In adversity, when problems are coming at me, when life gets hard. And trust me when I tell you, that happens often. In adversity, be able to summon the faith that can meet any emergency, can meet any of those problems, can live happily while serving higher power through the shit that comes my way. I have enough faith and enough reliance upon God to live through those issues. Humility as a word and as an ideal has a very bad time of it in our world. Not only is the idea misunderstood, the word itself is often intensely disliked. Many people haven't even a nodding acquaintance with humility as a way of life. Much of the everyday talk we hear and a great deal of what we read highlights man's pride in his own achievements. His pride in his own achievements. Her pride in her own achievements. I want to talk about that for a second before I move on. What they're saying here is a lot of people don't actually understand what humility means. And I found out the hard way that what they mean by that is most people, when they hear the word humility, think of humiliation or being humiliated, right? And nobody likes to be humiliated. And you know how I found that out? I was actually playing a video game on my phone. It was one of those war games where you work with the clan and you got a bunch of like people that are working online and you play together and you chat and do all this stuff. Anyway, it's not important. The point is I was chatting with these people. And this one lady said something really kind of humble. And I texted her. I was like, I really was impressed by your humility. And the response that I got back was, oh, you don't fucking like it, then fucking quit the clan, blah, 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 right? And I was like, what? And then I wrote, You must have misunderstood what I said. I was complimenting you on you being humble. That is what humility is. And then her response was, oh, sorry, thank you. And that was it. And then I quit the game. I'm like, fuck these people, they're fucking idiots. But that's my defects, right? But that's when I realized that people see that word as a negative. And it's not. It really isn't. It's actually what helps me become a better human being. Helps me build character when I'm able to humble myself. And when it starts happening naturally, it really turns into a beautiful thing where I want to start helping people because I am humble. Make sense? Well, we'll talk about a little bit more about that later. With great intelligence, men of science have been forcing nature to disclose her secrets. The immense resources now being harnessed promise such a quantity of material blessings that many have come to believe that a man-made millennium lies just ahead. Poverty will disappear, and there will be such abundance when people have so much stuff that everybody can have all the security and personal satisfactions as they desire. The theory seems to be that once everybody's primary instincts are satisfied, there won't be much left to quarrel about or fight about or argue about. The world will then turn happy and be free to concentrate on culture and character. Solely by their own intelligence and labor, men will have helped shape their own destiny. So in other words, self-reliance. Well, I've learned that I can't rely on myself because that got very, very painful. And I got very, very sad and lonely and desperate. Certainly no alcoholic and surely no member of AA wants to deprecate material achievement. We don't want to shit on it. We don't want to, we don't want to say it's all bad, is what that means. Nor do we enter into debate with the many who still so passionately cling to the belief that to satisfy our basic natural desires is the main object of life. See, those basic natural desires. Now we're talking about instincts again. Didn't we just spend a couple weeks talking about instincts? That's pretty neat, eh? But we are sure that no class of people in the world ever made a worse mess of trying to live by this formula than alcoholics. And what formula is that? I'm going to get my natural desires. Remember, we've been talking about we either over-exaggerate them or they're undeveloped, which all end up being defects of character. For thousands of years, we've been demanding more than our share of security, prestige, and romance. When we seemed to be succeeding, we drank to dream still greater dreams. When we were frustrated, even in part, we drank for oblivion. Never was there enough of what we thought we wanted. In all these strivings, so many of them well-intentioned, our crippling handicap had been our lack of humility. We had lacked the perspective to see that character building and spiritual values had to come first, and that material satisfactions were not the purpose of living. Quite characteristically, we had gone all out in confusing the ends with the means instead of regarding the satisfaction of our material desires as the means by which we could live and function as human beings. We had taken these satisfactions to be the final end and aim of life. Okay, we'll stop there. I think that's where you wanted to stop. Okay. I remember Bill reading this with me when I was a couple months sober, so several years ago. And I think looking back, like you're just taking 10 here soon, right? So he wasn't even a year sober, and he was reading this book with me, and he was that much into step 7 then, and just as much as he is now. And I remember him reading this because I was one of those guys that thought, I can fix this still. I can fix this. I'll get a job, I'll get work, and I'll go pay off my debts, and I'll make good, and I'll start supporting my family properly again, and things will be okay. And Bill taught me through the reading of this chapter that is absolutely not the case. You remember we talked earlier about acting our way into better thinking, right? Because we can't think our way into better acting, better behavior. We actually have to work at being better humans, and the help of God, our minds start to change, right? Our minds start to want, like, naturally do that. But it's very similar to this. I have to work on the spiritual portion of my life first. That has to come first. I have to start putting back into life. And for those that are, the God thing really freak them out or whatever, I like to look at it like this. Have you ever heard of karma? It's pretty simple, right? What goes around comes around. If I put shit in the world, shit's going to come back and hit me in the back of the head, right? If I put good in the world, some of it might roll back to me. And I believe that. I actually do believe that wholeheartedly. But here's the deal. I spent 44 years of putting shit in the world with a little bit of good here and there. It took a long time for the good to come back. It took a lot of practice for me to change my thinking. And that was one of the first things that had to change. And I'll be honest with you guys, it took 3 years. 3 years of recovery, not just staying sober, but actively working these principles to the best of my ability every single day, going to meetings, sponsoring people, building relationships with my friends, and suffering with this material thing in my life. And finally, I told you guys all this story. Finally, Bill said to me, it sounds like a lot of your will when it comes to the finances. And it struck me like a hammer. I was like, holy crap, I've been running the show because I've been successful before and I thought I could do it again. And I prayed. I prayed heavy in my truck. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was doing this. You've improved my whole life in 3 years. Every bit of it, except my electricity gets cut off, my phone's getting cut off, and I can't pay my bills for 3 years. Why? I don't understand. But you know what? I give it all to you because I don't need to understand. I think this is the lesson you needed me to learn. I need to rely on you for everything. So even if that means you want me to be a bum, it's still better than it was 3 years ago. My life is still better than it was 3 years ago. I give it to you. I'll do whatever you need me to do. And things dramatically started changing after that, very quickly. Mm-hmm. Crazy stuff. Spiritual had to work. And I had been working on the spiritual side of things for 3 years, but I held on to that one thing, and it was the freaking material. And it was hurting me. And that was a huge lesson that I had to learn because it stood in between me and God. It stood in between me and being humble because I still thought I had it. You know what I mean? That's not humble. That's me thinking I know better. I think you got more.
Do you remember? My recollection of what Gord's talking about. So I used to work with Weatherskin, which was a company that I was talking to Amanda before the study started, and like my journey to get to the Weatherskin job where I was finally making money it was about a 3.5 year journey. A friggin' hell. Like not getting any jobs that I wanted, and like I used to own $1 million company, and I worked for Atco and like Jacobs Engineering, and I had some like very high paying jobs. But then when I came in the recovery on my journey through those early years, I couldn't get anything going for me. I look back today and go, but I knew back then kind of too that I wasn't getting what I wanted because I needed to learn my lesson. I didn't even make enough money at a couple of the jobs to pay my child support and my rent and all the things that I needed to pay, but I still woke up grateful, and I prayed every morning for my piece of shit car and the piece of shit job that I had and the shitty wages that I was making, and I still was grateful. And I remember my landlord saying, like, just seems like you're sloughing me off and you just don't care about paying your rent and you're paying for everything else. And so he judged me and he was resentful. He was ready to kick me out. And I'm like, dude, like, I can't even afford to fucking eat, man. Like, trust me, I don't have any money. And I'm giving it to my ex-wife who was over there. At that time, I was giving her everything that I promised her, and I didn't really have anything. I wasn't getting any breaks on work, and it had to be that way, right? And then eventually I started getting some breaks, and I started kind of getting my career back. When I first came in the recovery, all I wanted was to make my money again and to get my house again and to do the things that I'd already done. And then I got that job, and Gord was like flailing, right? He had came in a little bit behind me. He used to make big bucks, but he was making shit, right? He was fucking smoking crack in the meetings and fucking doing all sorts of like really crazy shit. And then he finally got sober, and like he was right. We read that little piece in the Step 7 in my red 2-wheel drive Ford truck. I hated red trucks. I hated 2-wheel drives, and I hated Fords. There's like an example. And so anyway, I'm in that truck reading that with him.
And when he says truck, he means really like a tiny truck. Right on.
Okay. Anyway, so fast forward, I got this job. Gord's hurting. He can't scrape 2 pennies together. He's trying to do contracting on his own. He's trying to get all these side jobs, and he comes to me and says, do you think you guys can hire me to do some subcontracting? This is what I can do. I can do all these things. And, I had a heart, and I'm like, fuck yeah, maybe we can. So we gave him a job doing some coding on a mock product that we were trying to sell to some other companies. And so he did that and did whatever we gave him, right? And but me as a guy in recovery and as a sponsor and a pillar, I'd run into Gord and he'd be like, fuck my life and my job. And he just keeps trying, right? And eventually, as his friend, I just couldn't take it anymore. I'm just like, I got to tell this guy the fucking truth. If I don't tell him the truth, I'm not helping him. But then as you tell people the truth, you risk the relationship too, right? Depending on where they are and if they're going to handle it. And I just said to him, I said, dude, you're fucking running the show. You're not surrendered. You haven't given this part up, and you fucking ain't healing until you let go of this shit, man. And it was a really scary fucking thing to let go, right? But that hit him, like he said, right between the eyes. And I remember specifically the office it was in. Jesse was there too. Yeah. And he just melted with humiliation in a sense. But then it wasn't long after that, and he surrendered, and then Creator.
In my truck 3 minutes later.
But Creator gave him, I'm going to say 4 months later, this big opportunity to be this manager of this restoration company. And then from there, everything went good. Later, I quit Weatherskin because I couldn't sell my soul for the money anymore. Even though it was good money, I was making great money. But eventually, I couldn't do it anymore. And I quit, and then I was fucking flailing. So I go to Gord and said, dude, can you hire me? He got me an interview, but the company wasn't doing so good at that point, and then I never did get a job. But there's so much pain and humiliation in both of our stories, and speaking from my own, lots, right up until 3 years ago. 3 years ago it started to change, and I'm 10 years sober, right? Jesse, my buddy, came to me at 6 years sober and said, bro, I'm fucking worried about you. He's like, I love you, man, but I want to tell you some things, right? He was thought something was wrong. He's like, everybody in recovery that you came into sobriety with, they're all doing well. They're all in decent relationships. They got money. They got their career. They're driving decent vehicles. He's like, and no offense, you're still driving a fucking piece of shit. You don't have a career going. You don't have anything really going. And in my heart, I knew it was coming from a good place. But in deeper part of my heart, I knew that if I worked for God and his kids, they would work for me. And I had a plan, and I had so much faith in God and Creator that I just kept doing what I needed to do because I knew that He would like give me. I didn't know. There was no guarantee. I just thought that He would gift me. But I had to go into that with no expectations because there's no guarantee, right? But because I wanted to be like an influencer in recovery. And I knew I could do it with people in recovery, even when I didn't have anything. I still had a lot of people believe in what my words were and what I did and the path that I walked. But I figured I could like hit a bigger audience if I could hit the world of the material. So I wanted to stay the course and hit the world of the material, which meant, make money and make big money and do different things differently so that people that maybe weren't alcoholics, they could see, because it's a spiritual malady, right? Everybody suffers it. So I just stayed the course, and like, sure enough, like in my life today, and this isn't to be arrogant, but it's actually happening this way. And I really attribute it to me staying the course and serving God's kids. And when I was starting to build the business that I'm building, I remember I made the thing. Some of you guys that know me, I've always said, don't make the thing the thing. The thing is not the fucking thing. And what do I mean by that? I mean, whatever your goal is and your aspiration in life, yeah, okay, go that direction, but don't make it the fucking thing. Because on the journey to the thing, you move and you shift and you change, and that thing moves and shifts and you change as a result of it. So if you make the thing, you'll start prying and grabbing and snatching out of life again. And I started doing that, and I realized one day, I'm like, holy fuck, I feel sick. And then intuitively, no word of a lie came to me. It was just like, boom, you've lost what your purpose is, bro. Get back to the simple basics. It's not about the thing. It's about, there's one who has all knowledge and power. That one is God. You'll find him now. Start helping people here now and remember what got you here. And then I started doing that, which was about 2 years ago again. And then it all just started going again. So I always remember, and this always clears away any of the shit. Why am I doing what I'm doing? I do it so I can help God's kids and serve Creator. Once I remember that and I'm like right here with it, nothing, all the noise goes away. Whatever other people think, what's happening in my life, all the money issues, like that all goes away. And if I ever had to sell like the money part out for this, there's no question, I will. I'll stop doing what I'm doing because I'm not going down there again because I don't want to live like that. So those are facts. Anyway.
Love it.
Another time, Gord and I, when he did a study with me and Jesse 3 years ago,
I guess,
we were at the Plumber Pipefitter Union Hall, and you and I Jesse was gone on a holiday, and me and you jumped in my car because we used to read before every big book study for 2 hours. And then he jumped in my car and we read this step 7. And you never had actually seen it quite like that at that time. You remember that?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that was a fucking big day too, right?
It was a big day. A lot of big days. God gives me a lot of big days. But I have to humble myself. I want to say something about this too. Yeah, I got a job back in restoration, but and I always tell this story as if it was like the same week I got the job, because that's how good God is, because that's how I feel it, right? That's how I remember it, because I'm old, my memory's shit. But now I'm being reminded it was about 4 months after I surrendered and went, wow, sorry, take it all. And I was applying to a lot of jobs, right? Because I wanted to get back into the restoration industry. I wanted to do what I was good at. And I knew it would pay the bills, right? And I wasn't getting any of these jobs. Bill even shot me one of his ACO contacts and said, here, call this guy. And I went and interviewed with these guys, and they were like, oh, no, you're too good. That's seriously, and I'm not saying that egotistically. They're like, you're a project manager. We're looking for a site super. If we come up with a project management position, then we'll give you a call. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm starving, man. I can't believe I got here. My phone could die at any minute because they're gonna cut it off, right? No one was hiring me. And I asked somebody, I don't even remember who it was, but I asked somebody, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And they said, well, how's it go in an interview? And I'm like, well, only ask you your experience. That's the easy part. I've been doing this shit for 20 years. I know my shit. I can talk the game. It's no problem. And they're like, and then what? And I'm like, well, and then they usually ask me how much money I want, and I tell them, and then we move on from that, and then we have a little more of a conversation, and then it's over, and then they don't fucking call me. And he's like, yeah, I wonder. So you go into these interviews with an expectation, eh? And I went, well, I don't, what do you mean? Well, you tell them an amount that you think that you are worth. And I went, huh, yeah? So I've always done it. He's like, yeah, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. And guess what? He said, why don't you go in there and say, you know what? At that point in the question, because it always comes up. Everyone here's interviewed for a job, right? What are your salary or your pay expectations? It always comes up. And they advised me to say, you know what? At that point, why don't you try saying, you know what? I don't have an expectation. Why don't you pay me what you think I'm worth? And then I'll spend the next few months showing you what I'm actually worth. And we can talk again after 3 months. Yeah. And you know what? That's exactly what I did. And I got the job for about half of what I'm used to making in that position. And guess what? I humbled myself and I took it. And guess what? After 90 days, they gave me a huge raise. And guess what? I started teaching people, and I started helping the people that I worked with, because they'd just been slaughtered for 5 years by a management team that cheated and stole and lied and treated them poorly. And so I took it upon myself to teach those people how to be better. And I cared more about the staff that I was working with. Actually, there was only one when I fired the receptionist. She was the receptionist and the flood tech. That flood tech today is operations supervisor. That's where I've helped them to get to, right? I take a pride and a care in the people that work for me now. So now you got a glimpse into what I'm about to say. I cared more about the people, the jobs, the cleaning up. They asked me to start marketing the company because they were hemorrhaging money. They were in the red. And I said, no. And they said, what? I said, that's not the game here, guys. This year, I've just audited these 42 files, and good or bad, you've got all the information. You know exactly what's happening. I said, the marketing that we're going to do this year is making all of these people whole again. You have to fix this shit, or you have to make amends. You have to set this all right before we can do any marketing at all, because your name is shit here. And I spent the next year building the team, making people whole, acting in integrity. And guess what? They promoted me to Western Regional General Manager. And within a year, guess what else happened? They gifted me a partnership in the company. You want to talk about, and I'm not bragging, please do not take this as a brag. This is God. It has nothing to do with me. This is all God. I had not an inkling about a partnership or ownership in a company, being a shareholder. I had no thought of that whatsoever. That time had passed for me. I was an addict in recovery. That was as good as I was going to get, would to become a project manager and be a good guy. That's all I wanted. My finite self saw that. But infinite God saw that I was working on humility. I was working on my defects of character. And the shit that he showed me in my life so far, I can't even begin to tell you how good it is. And I'm not just talking about the material shit, because that's about the least of my blessings. I get to help people. I sat at a trade meeting for lunch today, and I got to talk about how I need them to be people of integrity if they're going to fit in with our company. And I had the project manager that brought them there beside me agree with that. I love that shit. I get to affect people's lives. I get to know that the people that work under me now go and smile at the lady in Tim Hortons drive-thru. Why? Because they've heard it from me. Be kind to people. And that's a blessing, because I don't know when it happened, but that's how I operate now. And it's all from this step. It's all from step 7. Yeah. Sorry.
Beautiful.
I went on a little too much there, I think. But
You prayed to not do that.
sometimes I override my prayers. I have to think about it later at night, laying in bed.
Okay, I'm going to bust through this quickly before we have a break, so just bear with me. I haven't even started reading this step yet, Robin. Since this step so specifically concerns itself with humility, 3 levels, remember that through all of the humility talk, we should pause here to consider what humility is and what the practice of it can mean. So Gord and I are talking about what the practice of humility can mean to us and what it can do in your life. And I'm looking at Lee and Amber Lee, they're right there. Like, these two have some great stories in the last few years of like what it can do also, right? And many other people in here too, right? And I know Austin and Waynette probably have some good stories too. Like, this shit is fucking real, what we're talking about today. Indeed, the attainment of greater humility is the foundation principle of each of AA's 12 steps. It's the foundation principle of all the 12 steps. And like, you think about step 1 and the humiliation it takes to come in, that's what it's talking about, right? Step 2, it's like, you're telling me I got to believe in a God to like run my life? That's kind of humiliating, and it's a tough pill to swallow. Step 3, you're going to get me to like surrender my will and my life over the care of God. Like, all of these are like more humiliation types of humility, right? It's not like the desire to seek and do God's will when I walk in here slithering under the door with alcoholism or drug addiction. That's not the deal. Like, I'm humiliated, man, right? And I don't even really want to be here, and there's something wrong with you guys, but I got nowhere to go. So it's like the pain of having to stay here is like part of the pain of like the changing, right? So it's the foundation principle. Later, the humility changes kind of throughout the steps as you gain traction in it. But there's still typically always an element of humiliation and pain. But eventually, the desire to seek and do God's will, to want to change, that actually starts pulling you through it all. At first, it's just you don't want to drink. And you don't want to go back, and you'll just stay here and put up with all of us, right? Right, Robin? I remember when you were brand new. Anyway, for without some degree of humility, no alcoholic can stay sober at all. Nearly all AAs have found too, this is a promise, that unless you develop much more of this precious quality than is required just for sobriety, they still don't have a chance of becoming truly happy. The truly happy is a promise, but if you don't develop more of this precious quality than is just required to stay sober, you won't really have the chance to become truly happy. Not just happy, truly happy. And without it, here's another one, you can't live the much useful purpose, or like Gord said, in adversity, here's a promise to be able to summon the faith that can meet any emergency. If you develop more of this quality through what me and Gord are kind of displaying tonight and talking about, you can have the faith that'll meet any emergency. Way back in the We Agnostics, we talked about no later vicissitude had shaken it. This guy tumbled to his knees, and the cornerstone was fixed in place, and he turned his will and his life over, that last 2 pages of the We Agnostic, and it says no later vicissitude had shaken it. That's what we're talking about. Vicissitude means life's happenings. Nothing really shakes your belief in your strength in Creator once you build this relationship. And it comes through like your step 10. Willingness, turning it over, being aware of self, not doing those things, talking to pillars. Like, there's a whole bunch of things kind of included in this, right? But you can have the faith to summon and meet any emergency. And I love this piece here where unless you develop much more of this precious quality, and I like to say it like this. What's the most precious stone on earth? Diamond? Okay, diamond. Let's say it's a diamond. Okay, so let's say it's a diamond. Where do they get diamonds? Africa, way up in the middle of nowhere, Northwest Territories. Like, these diamonds are in places nobody wants to go get them. So when you go to get the diamonds, you got to like build like roads in there. You got to like move a lot of shit out of the way to go get this precious diamond. And then you got to put dynamite in the mountains after you've cleared the road. You got to blow up the mountains. You got to sift through all of the excavation material that is the blowed up mountain to find these little rocks through hundreds of thousands of tons of like fill material to find these little fucking diamonds that are maybe this big. But you're going through these big extremes to blow things up, build roads in where nobody's built them so you can find these things. So when we think about us, it's like we're building inroads into ourselves. And we're putting dynamite into ourselves, which is the steps, which is the step 4, which is pillars, which is your inventory. And you start blowing up yourself. Why? Because you're on the quest to try to find this precious quality that's inside of you. And as you hone these precious qualities within you, it's like taking that diamond and starting to chip it and starting to shape it, and you send it off and you get it kind of chipped up and shined up, and eventually you got this beautiful fucking stone that just shines, that everybody wants. But that stone that you see on the showroom floor didn't come without a huge amount of fucking work and blowing shit up. That's kind of what humility is in us human beings. And it doesn't come easily. Join us in the fellowship of the Spirit. You will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. The road of happy destiny and trudging means walking with purpose. And so the fellowship of the Spirit is where these diamonds exist. And what does it say before those lines? Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past and give freely of what you find and join us. You can join us in the fellowship of the Spirit. And you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. So that's what this journey is. These precious stones, this precious quality that you need more of to be truly happy, to summon the faith that can meet any emergency. It takes more willingness and effort than your average fucking person is going to do. But it's worth it, as you're hearing from him and I today. And by no means are we finished. We just keep going, right? And it never really ends. Humility as a word and as an ideal has a bad time in our world. Gord nailed it. Not only is the idea misunderstood, he did not touch on this one though. The word itself is often intensely disliked. He nailed it with humiliation. People hate the word humiliation or humility because they attribute it to humiliation. The other one where it says not is the idea only misunderstood as well. Think about this. Go to a 3-topic discussion meeting, say humility, put humility on the board, and then the room opens up to sharing. You're going to hear about 20 different fucking versions of humility. And I think Bill must have done that in his younger years and went, fuck, I think everyone's out to lunch. The idea is misunderstood. Because you'll see it at a meeting. Listen, right? I just go by what it says in the book. You know, the desire to seek and do God's will. So many people haven't even a nodding acquaintance with humility as a way of life. So what it's saying is we got to try to make humility as a way of life. But most people don't even have a nodding acquaintance of that way of life. What does that even look like? What's a nodding acquaintance? Well, I always say it like this. Imagine you're down on the Red Mile in Calgary on 17th Ave, and the Flames just won the fucking Stanley Cup. And you're walking there, and there's 20,000 people, and you see Buddy from across the fucking street, and you don't really know him, but you recognize him, and you just look, and you both go like this. That's it. It's just like, sup. But not even sup. Just, so most people don't even have that much of an acquaintance with humility as a way of life. So we got to like really take this to a further extreme to like make it a way of life.
But I do imagine the Calgary Flames in the Stanley Cup every season.
We can dream. Okay, I'm going to skip. With great intelligence, men of science have been forcing nature to disclose her secrets. The immense resources now being harnessed promise such a quantity of material blessings, and many have come to believe that the man-made millennium lies just ahead. Poverty will disappear and will be such an abundance that everybody can have all the security and personal satisfactions they desire. If they wrest happiness and satisfaction out of this world, if they only manage well. If I can just have the right job with the right wife and the right kids and all of these things, and I can put all these chess pieces together, I'm going to be fucking okay. That's what it's kind of saying. The theory seems to be that once everybody's instincts are satisfied, especially my own, there won't be much left to quarrel about. The world will then turn happy and will be free to concentrate on culture and character. And so I remember with my family, Shannon, Lucy are here, Jillian's not here, and my daughter Lila. My thing was, let's sacrifice and let's fucking work and let's do this and we're going to fucking gain. And I remember the kids and, the African kids would be on TV and they'd be like, support us, poor African kids with the flies on their lips and stuff. And I'm not saying that to be funny. It's just a real commercial. And the dogs that, are beaten and everyone wants to help everyone. And my kids would say, hey, can we help these homeless people? Or can we help the kids in Africa? Can we help these dogs? And I said, we'll help them when our shit's fucking good. When our stuff's good, we'll help everybody, right? And that's exactly what it's saying. That's the story of my life. I'll be free to concentrate on culture and character once we're okay. Solely by their own intelligence and labor, men will have shaped their own destiny. Certainly no alcoholic and surely no member of AA wants to deprecate material achievement. Nor do we enter into the debate with the many who still so passionately cling to the belief that to satisfy our basic natural desires is the main object of life. But we are sure no class of people in the world ever made more of a mess trying to live by this formula than alcoholics. That's true. That's the delusion. That we can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if we only manage well. Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest? Victim, tricked or duped, delusion, lie, resting, grabbing, snatching, prying out of life. That's what we do. But alcoholics take it to the extreme. For thousands of years, we've been demanding more than our share of security, prestige, and romance. When we seemed to be succeeding, we drank to still greater dreams, and we were frustrated even in part, we drank for oblivion. Never was there enough of what we thought we wanted. And I have a story on that, but I'm not going to share it right now because my ex-wife's here and I don't want to make her cry. Because she's still a little shaken by everything that happened those years where I fucked everything right up. But we had a good chat the other night, and as bad as it seemed, I talked to her and I said, it had to be that way for me, Shannon. I never would have woke up in my life. I would be fucking rich and miserable. And my kids would probably not have the experiences that they're having with spirituality and their own healing journey. And, everyone is, in my opinion, better off because of it, on the soul journey, maybe not from the looks of the world or the material journey. And so we had that chat the other night, and for my own soul's growth, I had to be smashed. I had to fucking lose it, man, so I could find it. Right? And it just kind of sucks, but does it really suck that other people had to be part of the shrapnel? I don't believe that's right, because I think nothing happens in God's world by mistake. We all have the contracts with each other, including Shannon and I and my girls, and we're all on a journey of the soul healing, and that's really the bottom line as far as I'm concerned. She might have a different opinion and she can have hers, but it probably ain't going to change mine.
It's not totally wrong. My wife took me back and we built a relationship and stayed together, and we're celebrating 27 years. But I was just talking about this with you today. It took the first few years before she wasn't really pissed at me anymore. And it took a couple more years for her to start actually being able to openly love me again, if that makes any sense. And That's a far cry, because in the first 9 months, she was like, I start acting out in defects, and she'd see old Gord and go, I need you to go to the doctor and get a piss test. And my immediate response in my head is like, what the fuck? I've been fucking sober for 9 months. This is the first time I've actually ever stayed sober this long. How dare you? But in my body, I acted my way into better thinking. I went, okay. And I went and got a fucking piss test and proved it. And she said, as soon as you agreed to go, I knew you were fine, because you never agreed to go before. You used to yell and fucking be a dick and, all that. So that was the start. And then she stayed angry because I hurt her deeply. And that's not easy to get over, right? And just because people say that they're sorry, just because people try and show that they're sorry, doesn't make everybody all better right away, right? And the time is the time. The time that it took my wife is maybe very different than the time it's taking Shannon. Who the hell am I to judge? Who the hell is he to judge? It's not up to anyone to judge. That's on God's plan, right? And that's pretty neat stuff when you get to accept that, like Bill just did. He just totally accepted that. Did you hear him do that? I heard that. And I thought that's really cool. That's, out of this whole thing, that's what I wanted to point out. He had completely accepted that, that her opinion may be different, but this had to happen because it's on God's plan. It's what I needed. It's what she needed. It's what they needed. I don't know why. I don't need to know.
Well, part of it, my youngest daughter, she just called me the other day, or like the other week or whatever, and she's like, she says this, she's like, Dad, I'm so thankful that I have you and my mom as my parents. Yeah. Because what you guys have taught me about spirituality and about open-mindedness and about all these things, she's seeing within her age group, and she's 21. She's like, she didn't say it exactly like this, but she said, I'm so far advanced in some ways where I'm using my intuition. My friends are like, that doesn't make sense. But it makes sense to her. And we had the talk where you never apologize for God. And I know Lucy's on her own journey too, right? And she's like, in ceremony and doing all these things. And, she's pregnant with her own struggles in life, but she keeps relying on Creator. And she's like, she's going to be okay. Like, I believe my kids are going to be okay. And it's because of my life and how it went, and then some of the ripple effects of that, right? And I don't really worry about them. It's not like I don't help them, but they're on their own journey. And I got to let them be on their journey. All I can do is if they ask me for advice, I'll give them advice. If they don't ask, fuck it up as bad as you want. Right? And they're not really fucking it up because they're going to learn. And they will learn because of the things that they've kind of learned now. And Shannon's kind of, can I share a little bit? Like she's coming around, right? She's like, just share a little bit. She's here, right? She's not an alcoholic, but she wants to get well. And she's seen what this has done to me. Cool. And she knows me. She knows that I was violent and angry and a fucker. And I'm not like that anymore. I'm just a pretty chill dude. And but she wants that, right? And so I probably shouldn't really say it, but I'm going to. I'm taking my ex-wife through a deep set of steps right now because I don't want her to live that way anymore, and she doesn't want to. And that's a huge commitment for me and for her. And it's a scary endeavor. I don't even know how I'm going to do it all because I can't do it all. Because there's certain things that I just can't do on this journey with her. But I know God will guide me on who can help on this path, right? But her courageousness and her willingness to fight and fucking keep going is like mine was years ago when I wanted to fucking not be here, right? But God gave us this desire to live and blah, 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 right? So I don't know, our family is really blah, just blah, blah. Our family is getting really strong right now, but it's 10 years after it was destroyed in a sense. It's hard to kind of understand. You okay? You want to talk on the mic? I'm just kidding.
I'm so happy to have you here.
And she's amazing, man. Like, my ex-wife's an amazing human being.
So
right?
are your kids.
And my kids are too. Lucy. Anyway, in all these strivings, so many of them well-intentioned, our crippling handicap had been our lack of humility. Think about that, the crippling handicap. It means it's like you can still get by, but maybe both my legs are broken. The crippling handicap is my lack of humility. It's like, why do I suffer in life? It's because of my defective character and my lack of humility. And it's a crippling handicap. Doesn't mean that I'm not able to get by, but maybe it's very, very difficult because I don't understand humility. We had lacked the perspective to see that character building and spiritual values had to come first.
The what?
Character building and spiritual values have to come first. And character building doesn't mean just because you think you're nice, that you're fucking nice. You might be all using defective character in your best of intentions to be nice. Mm-hmm. And you still may suffer. Because why? Maybe you're not standing up for yourself. Maybe you're not confident in yourself. It's like, what's the motive behind being so fucking nice? Like learning how to stand in a truth of like boundaries for in love for yourself that's what's nice for you. Like, you got to be nice to yourself, man. Through being nice to yourself and loving yourself, you will be able to be nice and have boundaries for yourself. And it's not like you need to set the boundaries, because love for yourself sets boundaries. You just know, I'm not putting up with that. But until you acknowledge maybe what it is, you might put up with it because your codependency, bad habits, overlapping, who knows why. Validation, fucking inability to, have conflict, blah, blah, blah. We've all said it before. Conflict's still right here.
Here's an example, okay, because I know this is confusing. I have got a friend, we all ride bikes together. He's a pretty tough guy, but everyone likes him, and he's a good buddy of mine, actually, a really good friend. And I was sending him, because I'm that guy. I'm a 53-year-old guy. I'm a Gen X guy. And I think that giving your buddies the finger and sending them memes that tell them to fuck off and that they're queer and stuff like that. Sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone, but it's kind of funny, right? Like, it's a dude thing, right, from my generation. And so I was sending all my buddies those little memes that come up, and, the guy runs up and goes, "You're gay," and runs away. And I thought it's fucking hilarious, right? I want to be clear. I have some very, very good friends that are. I don't have a hate for it, but it's just funny when I grew up. And then I'll send all the ones where they do the finger and all sorts of different ways of flipping somebody the bird. And this guy got all offended, and he had to have this serious heart-to-heart conversation with me. And he's like, "Dude, I don't know what that is. I don't like being sent small dick jokes and finger, give me the bird jokes and stuff. I don't really appreciate that. I'd rather you didn't send that." And I went, "Hey, man, sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to offend you. It's just my humor. And, I sent it to all my good buddies, like there's 3 or 4 of you. I send them to you. But if you don't want me to send them, no problem. I won't." And I didn't. I stopped sending them I still send them to my other buddies because I think it's funny as fuck, right? But but I don't send it to him because that was his request. Now, here's the deal. When he talks about loving himself, that wasn't me loving myself. That was him loving himself to speak his own truth, right? But guess what? 3 months later, he sent me one. And I love myself enough to say, whoa, bud. You set a boundary here. I'm not allowed to send these to you, but you can send them to me? Oh, you like them. Yeah, I do. But you don't. And that you forfeited the right to send these to me. I love myself enough to say, hey, you fucking made yourself clear that you were important? Hear me. So am I. If you want to make a big deal out of something, then you better be sure that's not something you want to do. And you got to live up to that, right? And I cared enough to say that to a friend. I cared enough about myself because I've always been a bit of a people pleaser. And I don't like confrontation. I know you wouldn't have guessed it when I was younger, but it's truth. I always try to avoid that. So that's what he's talking about. It's love yourself enough to be able to be true to yourself, right? If somebody holds you to task, then you deserve the right to do the same. I'm not saying look for it, but I'm saying love yourself enough to be able to. Right?
Roger. Okay.
No, it's Gord.
Okay, just quickly, material satisfactions are not the purpose of living. Quite characteristically, we had gone out and confusing the ends with the means. Instead of regarding ourselves as the satisfaction of our material desires as by the means which we could live and function as human beings, we had taken these satisfactions to be the final end aim of life. So for me, I made all the things, the shiny things, the final end aim of life, and now it's the opposite. And I'm just going to finish with this. I read a piece of the book, which I've read many times. I think it was Power versus Force. And it said in that book that in order for somebody to like really evolve in like the levels of consciousness, they need teachers. They need a teacher. He said it's very difficult for somebody to do this on their own. It's almost like the best way to do it is with teachers, that's what this program's perfect for. It's full of fucking teachers because it can't really be done fully alone, probably because we're blinded by pride and our own rationalization. We can't see things quite the same as when you have teachers. Anyway, let's take a 10-minute break and we'll see you back here.
We'll get back to the podcast in a second. The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely of the guest sharing or myself. We have no affiliation with any 12-step or recovery program. And if you do like our work, please consider visiting BILLWARDLIFE and supporting what we do. Now back to the podcast.
Okay, kids, I'm going to start reading since we're right on schedule.
Yeah, we got 25 minutes left. Woo!
Bottom of page 71, 12 and 12. True, most of us thought good character was desirable, but obviously good character was something one needed to get on with the business of being self-satisfied.
Whoa.
With a proper display of honesty and morality, we'd stand a better chance of getting what we really wanted. So there's two readings that I give the most as a sponsor or as a pillar in the program. This is the number one reading that I give the most out of every line in any of the books. I have it double underlined. With a proper display of honesty and morality, we stand a better chance of getting what we really wanted. And that means like in any aspect of life, pretty much. Like you're getting a job, but you want to lie a little bit or whatever it is. This is like probably been like the biggest, most helpful stuff. But whenever we had to choose between character and comfort, character building was lost in the dust of our chase of after what we thought was happiness. Doesn't mean that it was, because it's often not. Why? Because it's fear-based. Seldom did we look at character building as something desirable in itself, something we would like to strive for, whether our instinctual needs were met or not. We never thought of making honesty, tolerance, true love of man and God the daily basis of living. So I remember being about 2 years sober, and I thought that God was everything. I was sure that God was everything. And I was really trying to do the best program that I could, and God was everything. And then I got to this page at 2 years sober. And I was reading this line, and I was like, we never thought of making honesty, tolerance, and true love of man and God the daily basis of living. And I kind of stopped, and I was like, is that the fucking basis of living? Is that what life's about? True love of man and God? And I kind of inserted all man and God. And then something shifted in me in that moment where I was like, I'm going to try that. And when I read this page that day, it was kind of like a surrender to like all of the literature. I kind of took all of Bill W.'s writing, especially in the big book in the 12 and 12, as word. And I was like, I'm going to commit and submit to like what these words say in these books, and I'm just going to believe it. Whether I believed it or not, I was going to act as if I believed it and do the actions regardless. And this was one. And then I read this line, this lack of anchorage to any permanent values. This blindness to the true purpose of our lives. And I was like, fuck, is that the purpose of life? Is the purpose of life to have honesty and tolerance and true love of man and God? Is that really the purpose of life? And like I was having these shifts that day. And it produced another bad result. For just so long as we were convinced that we could live exclusively on our own individual strength and intelligence, for just that long was a working faith in a higher power impossible. And really, what is that saying? If I'm still trying to manage my life and pry and grab and manipulate the outcomes and blame and try to get it, whatever it is that I want, and I feel bad that I'm not getting what I want, that's what it's saying. For just that long is a working faith in a higher power impossible. And there's a lot of people I've met that have been trying to work the program a long time, and they're just like, I just have never really felt that connection. And that's, when Gord started the Big Book study, he asked me, why do I do this? Why do I do this is huge in part so you can identify self and build the connection by identifying the defect of self and doing the opposite of that so that this doesn't happen, so that it's not impossible to connect with your higher power. This is so massive. This is theoretical God, is what this line's saying. This was true even when we believed God existed. We could actually have earnest religious beliefs which remained barren because we're still trying to play God ourselves. So a lot of you have heard me over the years talk about the theory of God is not enough. And I came up with that theory of God thing through these readings, and then also watching people in the program, and then tying it into the step 3 part where it said, first of all, we had to quit playing God. It doesn't work. This concept was the new and triumphant arch through which we pass through to freedom. And a concept was just an idea. And we could have these earnest religious beliefs where we believe in God, which remain barren. Means it's not there. Why? Because we're still trying to play God ourselves. As long as we place self-reliance first, a genuine reliance upon a higher power was out of the question. And I read that line and I was like, holy shit, where am I still placing self-reliance first? And then when I read it, it was in my relationship at the time, and it was in my career in finance. And then when I kind of looked at the pie chart of my life, of where I would make something God, God is really what you think about the most. And if I'm thinking about money and relationships the most, I'm actually making that God, regardless of what my mind thinks. And so at that time, those two areas were big areas where this really kind of shook me to the core. Because like I said, when I started this little talk, I really believed that God was everything. And then I read this and I was like, when I place self-reliance first, a genuine reliance upon a higher power is out of the question. And I'm like, I'm not turning these other areas over. So it kind of lit a fire under my butt to really try to let these areas go and turn those over to God. And this is where I get, here, I'll just read it. The basic ingredient of all humility, the desire to seek and do God's will. But it's missing. That is humility. Is the desire to seek and do God's will. And Gord talked about being humble and kind of related that to humility. I'm going to counter that. And Gord and I have had some counters in this Big Book study already, and I'm going to counter this one a little bit too. On the subsequent page, it'll talk about humility. And it actually says that that's not what humility is. And when we read, the idea is often intensely disliked and misunderstood. When you go to a meeting and humility is on the topic board and people have all these definitions for it, I think Bill W. was like, yeah, that's misunderstood. It's actually the desire to seek and do God's will, and it's missing. So I'll read. So for us, this gaining a new perspective, what's the new perspective that we're trying to gain in? In humility, okay? It was unbelievably painful. It was only by repeated humiliations that we were forced to learn something about humility. It was only at the end of a long road marked by successive defeats and humiliations and the final crushing of our self-sufficiency that we begin to feel humility as something more than a condition of groveling despair. So whatever your defect of character is that you struggle with, eventually it will crush you. It'll crush you. Your own self-imposed crisis that you can no longer postpone or evade. It makes your life so small and it starts destroying you. But as you kind of fight through these things, like we talked about that step 10 piece where it was like to fight through victory over them, first we have to learn something about humility, which typically means being humiliated and learning the lesson in a hard way because we keep banging our head against the wall, trying to resist the lesson or trying to get something that isn't ours. It was only at the end of a long road marked by successive, many defeats and many humiliations and the final crushing of our self-sufficiency where you finally surrender. That's the basis of step 6 is what he's talking about. That we begin to feel humility is something more than a condition of groveling despair. So he's also saying through that pain, you can come out and you start seeing it differently. That's where you start gaining the new perspective. So for me in my life, when I burnt down Shannon and I and my kids and my life with my own self-imposed crisis, and it looked like it was crack cocaine, but it was many different things because I used drinking and drugging to actually mask the pain, and it comes out as defects of character. And so it was really my anger crushing me, my judgment crushing me, my self-worth. There was so many things finally came to a position where it crushed me. And I finally became willing to fucking try something. But then the pain of like learning and growing, but eventually I kind of got to this point where I started to feel humility is more than a condition of this groveling despair. And that can be in like big ways or it can be in small little ways as you kind of move through your recovery and through life, okay? And that's why I always say when you believe that nothing is out of place, and God is everything, the seemingly good in your life and the seemingly bad, when you can really have that perspective, actually everything starts like relieving itself. Because you start looking at the negative and instead of resisting it and trying to like reposition and pry and grab and like fix it, you actually accept it as that's the lesson. What is the lesson for my journey of healing? And then you look at it differently and you'll look at yourself differently. Every newcomer in Alcoholics Anonymous is told and soon realizes for himself that his humble admission of powerlessness over alcohol is the first step towards its liberation from its paralyzing grip. First step is removal of the substance. That's it. That's first step, period, man. So it is first that we see humility as a necessity. But this is the barest beginning, removing the substance. This is gold. To get completely or away from our aversion to the idea of being humble. That's where Bill W., the author, is saying that humility is not being humble. The word aversion means intense dislike for. So Bill W. is saying, let's get completely away from the fucking idea that humility means being fucking humble. He's saying it, aversion. He has an intense dislike for that metaphor. To gain a vision of humility as the avenue to true freedom of the human spirit. There's the best promise in all of the Alcoholics Anonymous literature. The avenue to true freedom of your human spirit. How do you get that? Through the precious quality that you can find true happiness. To develop much more of this precious quality by going into the mountains, blowing the shit up, finding that diamond, and chipping it so it becomes the showroom floor, which is actually a way of living. That's not a nodding acquaintance. And as you see these people around in the program and in life, you see that thing in people that you're like, that's beautiful. That's what I want. And like those people are attractive, right? Like, you know, people are attracted to diamonds. People are attracted to people that walk with humility. And and the thing what I think about what 12-step programs actually do is I think one of the negative things in 12-step program is people are judged for standing in their like strengths. And it's like, oh, there's ego. Oh, there's arrogance. Oh, no, man. That's fucking humility. To know that you're good at something is okay. To know that, like, you can pat yourself on the back, but in the program, it's like people just judge the shit out of that. I am the type of guy that I wants to promote your best habits and what you're really good at, because that is part of you, right? And like, I also hear in the program, and you guys can disagree with me, but this is my big book study and it's my opinion. That it's just all God. It's all God. Everything is fucking God, God, God. Yeah, okay. But I have to get up in the morning, man. I got to fucking put my pants on. I got to drive to the sponsee's house. I got to get up and put my application in. I'm the one who has to walk through those trenches of a job that I hate. Like, it's kind of like a co-creating. And when you look at the literature, it doesn't say fucking abandonment of the will. It says the proper use of the will. So I need to use my will properly in alignment with God. So why isn't it okay for me to say, you know what? I'm doing a good job too. Me and God are co-creating. And that's the way I see it. So, but a lot of people, this is very judgmental. 12-step is very judgmental in some ways, right? So watch out for that and be okay with who you are. Don't let people and their judgments tell you whatever. And like, I can speak from experience from the person that I have been in 12-step recovery and the judgments that I do get and have gotten for many years. I'll share a story with you. Fuck, this just happened the other day. I get a call from my buddy. He's talking to me and he's like, yeah, dude, fucking this person reached out to me and they want to know like what happened and like blah, 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 blah. And Bill said this and blah, 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 blah to a sponsee about his sponsor and blah, 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 blah. And fucking, he's like, what happened, man? What'd you do? I'm like, I don't have a fucking clue. I don't know, man. And I don't need to know. And I don't want to know because I actually didn't do anything that I know of. But this is 12-step recovery. And especially if you're somebody who like steps up a bit, or you try to do it like, you know, as a way of life, you are going to get judged. And I want you guys to do it as a way of life. And I want you to know that it's okay to be okay with who you are and how you do it. And there will be judgment. And there will be people as you travel to different meetings and you do this way of life, and they will ostracize you and they will push you aside. But that doesn't matter. That's why we make the acquaintanceship with God, because God is our guide, and you always got to remember why you do what you're doing. And if you remember why you do what you're doing, all of that noise, it doesn't fucking matter. And you can stand confidently in any room and speak the truth, and you'll know when the ego comes up because you'll feel it. You'll feel it in your body. And then you make an adjustment. You don't beat yourself up. You can get some counsel from your pillars and fucking readjust, and it's okay. So that's important, okay? So get completely away from the aversion to the idea of being humble. To gain a vision of humility is the avenue to true freedom of the human spirit. To be willing to work for humility is something to be desired for itself. It takes most of us a long fucking time. A whole lifetime geared to self-centeredness will not be set in reverse. This doesn't happen right away. It's a millimeter by millimeter journey. And honestly, on the journey of like healing, it's a responsibility. I take my journey of healing as a responsibility. But I also can get guilted and shamed on the journey. Oh, you call yourself healed? No, I don't. I call myself fucking working on it, man. Right? But there's another judgment, right? People will do that. And that's fine. Let them do it. right? Gord read that. Let them, man. Don't worry. And through this process, and why I'm spending so much time, you will find self-love through what I'm saying. And through the self-love, you find your fucking truth and authenticity, and you don't need to justify yourself, which is why I didn't need to know what was being said about me, because I honestly don't care. I have no opinion on outside issues. Hence, my name ought not be drawn into your controversy, because I don't really care. I got a job to do. Ida?
It reminds me of a section before the promises on page 83. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping.
Exactly.
God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And that says exactly in a nutshell everything I just said. I should have just read that. And what Ida was saying was a piece in step 9 that kind of just describes in a nutshell what I was just saying. Gord, do you know where it is? Yeah. Or does anyone... 83? Gord's just going to read it so that the people on Zoom can hear what you said, Ida. Thank you very much.
So Ida was talking about in the big book to confirm what Bill was saying. At the bottom of page 83, it's going into it's talking about step 9s, right? And how to understand and know yourself and know your own motives. And when we are working for God, other people's opinions and actions don't matter, is exactly what Bill was saying. And Ida so brilliantly brought this up where it says, where should I lost it again? Sorry, hang on. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping, which is self-worth, right? As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. And that's exactly what Bill's talking about. Now, I also know Bill quite well, and I know that if someone approached him and said, "Can I have a conversation with you? You hurt me, and here's how," I guarantee you he would be open to be doing God's work and clearing that up. But until that happens, all the fluff and bullshit doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't change what we're doing here. It's the same as putting these big book studies on. And people, you know how many people I had? I don't even know how many, but I had a bunch of people. My friends approach me and say, "Oh, you guys are going against the traditions." No, we're not. We haven't mentioned a single fellowship since we've been sitting here. And in fact, we have a disclaimer that tells you that these are our opinions only. And they come from being able to have helped hundreds of people. That's it. There are no traditions broken, but people want to be right. People want to be heard. People want to have their opinions. I tell my sponsees, the rooms are filled with sick people, myself included. Some of us get a little better, a little faster, because we're putting in the work. Be careful who you spend your time with.
A whole lifetime geared to self-centeredness will not be set in reverse at once. Rebellion dogs are every step. The rebellion dogs are the temptations, your thoughts, negative thoughts, old ideas. Like, these things are really hard and they're always kind of barking at you. No, do this. No, don't do that. No, stay here. Stay comfortable. Don't. But it says that first. Because as you practice what this program says, persevering through the step 10, without reservation in the step 6, with a desire to seek and do God's will, it's only at first. But it could be a long time. A long time. And where I find it's a long time is when you're not following the practical application and directions of what we do, where you're self-willing principles into your life and you're just trying to be nice. No, man. Follow the directions. Learn what the directions. Become willing to be disciplined to follow these directions. As the result of the plan of recovery, the detailed proposal to achieve a goal, you will get the results of recovery, which is the process of getting well from an illness or an injury. Spiritual sickness is what we have. We get better from it through the practical application. If you can think honestly and search diligently within yourself, then if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude of God, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. Surrender of step 7. And you walk hand in hand with God. And once you have that, fuck man, nothing else really matters, right? So I'm just going to finish off this page and I'll turn it over to Gord. When we have finally admitted without reservation that we're powerless over alcohol, we're apt to breathe a great sigh of relief, saying, well, thank God that's over. So if you're just here on the substance and you have removed yourself of the substance and you have said, well, thank God that's over, I'll never have to go through that again. Then we learned, often to our consternation, that this is only the first milestone on the new road we are walking. So in the program, we often talk about time. That is the most important thing. It says right here, this is the first milestone. The real benefits of recovery is the milestones that you cross, and it doesn't mean time. It means building of character. You know, what character have you built down the path? Like, I got a few things at year 2, some at year 3, some at year 4. And these were big fucking breakthroughs, right? I could have stayed the same guy and sat here and got my 10 years in 3 days, but I might be a lot more miserable and not be very effective and doing it for the wrong reasons, right? But I think the milestones of at least my willingness to change, and hopefully your guys's, and it wouldn't, if you weren't here every week, I wouldn't think that you guys want to change, right? Like I've talked to Christian numerous times and Crystal, and these two want to change, right? And fucking Gilbert and Hector and Robin, and we all want to change. That's why we're here every week. And these are the real milestones that make a difference. And they're often the unseen ones, right? But that's not the point. Because the fellowship of the Spirit, you will surely meet some of us. The fellowship you crave grows up about you. The people will find you because that energy vibrates there. And that's not even the point. You just want to level up and live the best life you can, right? Still goaded by sheer necessity. So still goaded by sheer necessity, we reluctantly come to grips with those serious character flaws that made problem drinkers of us in the first place. Flaws which must be dealt with to prevent a retreat into alcoholism once again. If we don't deal with those flaws, they'll deal with us and we pick up again. We will want to be rid of some of these defects, but in some instances, this will appear to be an impossible job from which we recoil. And we cling with a passionate persistence to others. Why? They are just as disturbing to our equilibrium because we still enjoy them too much. And some of them we wouldn't think we really enjoy. Like self-pity, you would ask somebody, you enjoy self-pity? They're going to say no. But they do, because that's where it's comfortable, man. You know, lust, finances, women, men, there's so many defects that we're not willing to give up because we still actually enjoy them too much. But, like I said before, eventually you'll get crushed by your own self-imposed crisis. And it will crush you. Because being sober and getting older, that's just what happens, man. And if you don't learn how to deal with your shit in recovery, trust me, your shit deals with you. And not just in recovery like as us as alcoholics, but for sure, but in life in general. Just, you got to learn how to deal with your shit. And that means looking at your whole life and dealing with the pain, trauma, and harm that you might have caused yourself or that other people caused you. How can we possibly summon the resolution and the willingness to get rid of such overwhelming compulsions and desires? Question mark. Can anyone answer that? How do we summon the willingness to get rid of these overwhelming compulsions and desires? Anyone? Yes, God.
How do we do that, though?
It's God. Again, it's the step 6 piece, man. You know, admitting these things are objectionable in the step 6. Am I willing to let them go, it says, question mark. And if we're not willing, we ask God for the willingness. So we ask God to help us be willing. And if you're not ready to let it go, that's fine. You're going to probably get your ass kicked by it. But you just pray to be willing. And the thing about like me working with a sponsee that's willing, but it's hard to give up. If I really see that they're trying and they're willing, I'm not going to like smack them around for fucking acting in it because they're really trying. And that's the difference between a defect and a shortcoming. And if they're not willing to give it up, it's still a defect, man. But if they're really trying, it becomes a shortcoming because it's hard to fucking get rid of. So it's a shortcoming at the point where you've had to surrender. The action might look the same, and to especially Buddy over there who's just been watching you for 10 years, it looks like the same thing you've done, but if you had a shift in here and in here, it might look the same, but it ain't the same. But who knows that? You, God, and your pillars. That's who should all that really matter at that point. And eventually, if you know and God knows, that's really most important. But it's hard for us to stay totally honest without pillars. So that's really important. And they help lift you and keep you like on the track. That's it. Go ahead, Gord.
All right. It's 17 after, so I'm going to be fairly brief. Back on 72 at the top of the page, it talks about seldom did we look at character building as something desirable in itself. Why? Well, because I thought I was doing it right all along. And being a good guy wasn't what I thought was cool. And being a good guy, actually, if you go way back in my lifetime, being a good guy failed me. And being a good guy got me beat up at school. And being a good guy got me smacked around by my father. And being a good guy got my friend to get the girl before I got the girl, you know, and I learned very quickly, because I'm not a stupid guy, that being the good guy wasn't the good way to go, okay? So, hard to change my mind at this point in my life. But the beating that we've been talking about that humbled me or humiliated me, which I believe is the first step in finding humility, is the humiliation. That's what started me thinking I needed to think a different way. That's the beginning. That's why it starts mentioning first step again, that I'm powerless. The fact that I had to surrender to that powerless was the only thing that allowed me to start moving forward to find something that was powerful, which is God. So now here I am. I've gone through this at the step 4 stage with my resentments. I was just as powerless over my resentments as I was over my alcoholism and drug addiction. And once I was able to surrender to that, well, then I started being able to, column 4, entirely look at this list from a different angle, from an entirely different angle. But I wasn't able to do that until I had God's help, until I asked God to help me with it. And I couldn't do that until I humbled myself to start looking at that and to start asking for help from God. See, I'm going to explain how I think that him and I are both saying the same thing. He just thinks he thinks that he's got a different opinion. I think we're just wording it this differently. Something we'd like to strive for, whether our instinctual needs were met or not. So I wanted to help people in those first few years of recovery, and I did. And I prayed, and I did my best to get on with God, but I still suffered, and I was still down at Bill's job whining and bitching about my life, even though my relationships were good and things, all that was good. But it talked about that in here. Until I completely give of myself, true happiness can't be found, right? I wasn't able to really commit to a relationship with God until I gave him all of me, right? I wasn't able to do that. So somehow, here we go, this lack of anchorage, I had no anchor. Nothing was holding me to any permanent values. It blinded me to the true purpose of my life, which was what? To be effective, to help, to love people, okay? And in order for a guy like me to be able to love people, I had to lose the ego and the attitude and the sadness inside of me that caused me to be an angry guy outwardly. I had to humble myself. And I had to act my way into right thinking. I've talked about that a lot. Act my way into right thinking. I can't think my way into right behavior. I can't. I've tried it many, 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 many times over the years. The basic ingredient of all humility was a desire to seek and to do God's will was missing, it says. It says it was missing. Because I hadn't completely humbled myself in knowing that God was everything. So then we jump over to this next page where Bill says that he's got a different take, but it says, so it is that we first see humility as a necessity. Of course we did. We were humbled by it, by a beating that I've never taken in my life that made me willing to realize I was powerless. And then another beating when I realized what a piece of shit I was in step 4. And now another beating when I'm looking at those character defects and going, holy crap, I can't do this on my own. I need God's help. Humbling. To get completely away from our aversion, to get completely away from our aversion. So for me to get completely away from my hatred for the word humiliation or humility or humbling. Also to gain a vision of humility, for me to learn about humility as being the avenue to true freedom of the human spirit. This is the answer. Humility is the whole answer, is what that means to me. And to be willing to work for humility as something to be desired for itself. Not because I want to get out of this pain I'm in. Not because helping people makes me feel good about myself. But because, humility's the answer. And I've learned that over trial and error and days and years of practicing this shit and failing all the time and going back and asking God and saying, I'm sorry I failed again. Show me the right way. And I just keep showing up in people's lives and I practice. And I finally know that humility is the answer. And that's how I try to live my life every single minute and fail every other single minute, it seems at times. But I know it's the answer. That in itself is very humbling. So if we think that God is everything, and we think that humility is the total answer, then I would have to believe that the only thing that can humble me enough to find it is God. And therefore, I think we're saying the same thing. For me to get away from my hatred of humiliation and humble, and to have freedom of the true spirit, to gain vision of humility as the answer, I have to trust in God. And that's very humbling. This is still just the very beginning of humility. We have a bunch of pages left to read that go through more phases of humility. This is the very beginning. Let's get past the humiliation part and let's understand that this is the answer. How do we find it? That's what we're going to talk about, I think, next week.
Yeah, we got 2 more sessions to get 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah.
We'll just do our best.
We got